Christ, in your glory, come to light the way. Teach us how to follow. Amen. Well, before there were LEDs and digital moving lights and motorized systems, most theaters hung very heavy stage lights on pipes that went all the way across the stage and into the wings, and they hung about 30 feet from the floor. And they were operated originally by a counterweight system of rope pulleys requiring at least 2 very strong men in heavy gloves to operate. And they would lower the pipe to about 4 feet off the stage so that individual lights could be attached to the pipe with a C-clamp. They hung straight down and pointed at the floor to be cleaned and tested. Wrapped around the pipe were the cables containing the electrical outlets for each instrument. Now, the light most often used was an ellipsoidal, but it had a nickname. It was called a LECO. And each instrument, we have some here, and if you were sitting here with me, I would have taken one down so that I could show it to you. But each instrument has a barrel that contained a lens on one end, and it fit inside another barrel on the other end, so it could be moved back and forth to change the focal length. The lamp, or the bulb, was housed in its own compartment near the top of the LECO and fitted into the electrical outlet. Well, once all lights were cleaned and hung on that pipe, they were turned on, and each blazed a small circle on the stage floor. And to test the strength and the blend of each lamp and lens, the pipe was slowly lifted into the air, and each small circle began to grow. And because stages are always dusty, the beams sparkled as they lit up the dust particles in the air. And the further up the pipe went to its 30-foot perch, the growing circles of light began to meld together and fill the space with energy and beauty. In 45 years, I never tired of those moments when it seemed to me that the individual lights were being raised to meet their light source, and in doing so, spreading and sharing the beauty down below. Lift high the cross. That's what I see. The light of Christ has come into the world, born of a woman, to live among us, to shine into us, transforming our very DNA. And then, returning to the source, the light of Christ grows and spreads all over the world, igniting the light within each of us, should we be willing to receive it. And we share it with those in each generation with whom we live. That's what I see. That's how I can talk about it. What do you see? How do you talk about it? The bread of life? The good shepherd? The suffering servant? The King of kings? What is your language when you talk about Jesus, about God, about Easter? For me, it's light. Now, you know as well as I do that when talking about light, darkness is part of the equation. And you also know that in this earthly existence, this mortal human existence, there are times when the light can be hard to find. John's gospel speaks to that. John's gospel is a gospel of contrasts, of strong, vivid imagery that presents the light as slicing through the darkness, of hard edges, of clear choices. John defines the glory and truth of the light by contrasting it with the dangers of the hidden and the dark. Contrast helps us to see. Inject dye into a vein to see better a blood clot. But contrasts are not the whole story, and it is not how we actually live our lives. It is great for a painting, for literature, and we are to learn from it, but it is not the whole story. Let's change the word, just for a moment, from darkness to suffering. We all suffer. We all will die, as did Jesus when he took on human flesh. And we also know, if we are honest, that we suffer when we hide from God or ourselves. We suffer when we hurt someone or someone hurts us. We suffer when events overwhelm us. We suffer when we fail. We suffer when we are afraid. But most of us admit that we have learned and grown the most in our faith, in our ability to love and receive love from the sufferings we have endured. Suffering shifts our perspective. Suffering teaches us about ourselves. Suffering connects us to other people. And suffering will always be the road to the cross, to lifting high the cross, to the source of light. So what's wrong with the word darkness? Nothing in and of itself as a word, but we have this opportunity to look at what we have done with that word, how it has limited our understanding of ourselves, and how it has harmed others. John writes in contrasts, in beautiful language, to help our spirits grow. But John's very words have been used by others to separate, exclude, and justify violence. Either you believe this and are one of us, or you don't believe this and you are our enemy. Either you love the light or you hate the light. Either you are good, pure, and of Christ, or you are of the devil. Darkness has been used by some as a code for all that is bad, evil, sinister, and less than human. Contrasts are important for our understanding and to make things vivid, but they are not the whole story. In a late-night conversation with my seminary friend, Eleanor, who happens to be African American, she said she was struggling with her preaching assignment on these very passages in John. She explained that for people of color, the way the word darkness is flung around to imply inferiority, danger, dishonesty, evil intent, suspicion is troublesome. She said she realizes that most people don't notice those implications in their language, but Black people do. Dark and darkness are perfectly good words, she said, but so often they are a negative, and this impacts dark people. She said to me, "How do I even talk about this without sounding defensive or political or angry?" She said, "I'm not, but the stark contrasts in John's gospel are staring me in the face." We talked late into the night, and I have been so grateful ever since for her honesty, for opening my eyes and ears to the way language and images can both enlighten and harm. She said, "What matters is awareness, that's all, not judgment or defensiveness." Since then, we have had great conversations about all the things we love about the dark: the intimacy, quiet, the mystery, a velvet sky, timelessness, truth-telling, relief from the noise and busyness of the day. And we shared that the dark is often when we cry, worry, feel empty or alone, and when we seem to pray the longest and the deepest. So that's why I wanted to change the word, just for a moment, to suffering. Because suffering is not a contrast. It is universal, human, and required on our way to the cross. The Lico has a slot in the front of the barrel, just in front of the lens, where you can slide in a gobo. Now, a gobo is made out of very thin metal, and it's cut in various patterns. And so you slide it in, and then the beam of light projects that pattern on whatever surface, wherever the light lands. And some gobos are recognizable things, like flags, skylines, stars. But others are just patterns that mottle or break up the light. I loved break-up gobo patterns because they gave a texture to the atmosphere. When actors moved through the light, there were subtle reflections of both light and dark, fully integrated, dependent upon one another to illuminate and to soften the harsh, penetrating light bearing down on a face. John gives us stark contrasts to help us understand the glory of the light of Christ and the lifting high of the light of Christ as it spreads to all and is taken into the hearts of those willing to receive it. We know not all are ready. May we be ready. May we be willing to receive the light of Christ within us, knowing full well that suffering, often in the dark, will be part of the light we share with others. And may we grow and deepen in the wonder and mystery of God. Amen.